And our developing news here at 5, former House Speaker Michael Madigan sentenced to prison and fined for bribery, conspiracy, and wire fraud.
Let's get right to WGN's Julian Cruz, who joins us live with details on this sentencing. Julian.
Hey guys, of course, that sentence of 7.5 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. And it's my understanding that in federal prison, you have to serve 85% of your time. So the former powerful Speaker of the Illinois House, to do some jail time, he won't surrender until the month of October, so he has a couple of months ahead of him. But some punishing final statements from Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Stryker, as well as Judge John Blakey, expressing anger at the conduct of Michael Madigan and the damage that they say he has created in the erosion of public trust. They also drew a distinction between past Illinois politicians like Rod Blagojevich and George Ryan, saying that the difference with Michael Madigan is that his power and his presence remained constant. And he had every opportunity to set the standard for honest government, but he chose not to do that. So some anger being expressed by the parties in the courtroom, discontent with Michael Madigan. Now, of course, the former Speaker was asked if he wanted to make a final statement after breaking for about 10 minutes and talking to his lawyers, who certainly appear to be laying the groundwork for a possible appeal. He came back and he made a statement in the courtroom. You could hear a pin drop, a very dramatic moment. He said, quote, "I'm truly sorry for putting the people of Illinois through this. I did my best. And when I look back on my life, being Speaker was not what I'm most proud of. I'm proudest of being a good father and a grandfather. I love my children. I love my wife." And he asked Judge Blakey respectfully if he would allow him to come and take care of his wife, Shirley Madigan, who is having some severe health problems. In court today, it was revealed that she's suffering from colon cancer. Mike Madigan asking for leniency so he could take care of his wife. But Judge John Blakey talking about how he lied. He lied to the people of Illinois, and Judge Blakey took offense at the fact that he decided to take the stand to defend himself, and that he committed perjury, according to Judge Blakey, while he was on the witness stand. And that seemed to anger Judge Blakey as much as anything that happened today. Michael Madigan, guys, he as has been his trademark, not showing a lot of emotion. And after the sentence came down, there were a few minutes. He didn't even turn around to look at his family. He went and spoke to his lawyers privately there in the courtroom, but talking to each other face to face, maybe getting an assessment on the damage, and then turning and meeting his family, his 3 biological children. Lisa Madigan, the former Illinois Attorney General, was not present in the courtroom, but he hugged his 3 children who were there. And I don't know, it seemed to me, guys, like maybe there was a little bit of a relief in the faces of his children. You know, 7.5 years, the prosecutors were asking for 12.5 years. So, you know, a substantial difference, but the 83-year-old Michael Madigan is going to have to serve some prison time. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Julian, what a spectacular fall, dramatic fall after a long trial for the state's most powerful politician. We've been making a lot about the importance of the role that he took by taking his own, the stand in his own defense, and then doing it again today during the sentencing hearing. What is the general mood and reaction, as far as you've been able to ascertain, about, you know, the harm that ultimately did, now that we can, you know, look at it from you know, present tense?
Yeah, I think, you know, Judge Blakey said that it would have been a mitigating factor, you know, if he had apologized, shown some sort of remorse, and if he had refrained from taking the stand, where both prosecutors and the judge say that he committed perjury. He lied. Lied on the jury box, lied during the course of the lead up to the investigation and his trial. One of the most high-profile political trials. And we've seen some big ones here in the state of Illinois, but of course, he is the longest serving Speaker of the House in U.S. history, one of the most powerful politicians in Illinois history. I think there is a sense of disappointment. There was no reason for him to have to do this. You know, it was revealed in some of the pre-sentencing reports that Madigan has a net worth of $40 million. He had amassed a fortune of $40 million on a legislator's salary. Of course, he had a very successful law firm. But Judge Blakey, talking about how this is the tale of two Michael Madigans, this Madigan that didn't need to do this. You know, he had a lucrative tax appeal law firm. So I think people expressing some puzzlement over how this could happen. You know, more than 200 letters from folks from all walks of life, close friends of Madigan, family members, fellow legislators as well, sending letters to the judge asking for leniency. And of course, Shirley Madigan, his wife, who sent a videotape to the judge talking about how she can't live without Michael Madigan. But Judge Blakey himself getting a little bit emotional. You could hear his voice cracking a little bit as he talked to Michael Madigan. So a very dramatic moment in the courtroom, and we'll have more. We're hoping that the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois will come down and talk to reporters here shortly. We'll bring you the latest, of course. Back to you guys.
Great. We'll check back in with you, Julian. Thank you.